Hi guys, it's me Aisyah. Today we're gonna continue with our PR presentation. Please stay tuned till the end. For the PR 4-step process, our group did the step 3, which is taking action and communicating. We're gonna go one by one. So the first one is the action program. The action program basically means a strategy or open systems response to change pressure in the environment. So whenever there is a crisis happen, adjustments and adaptations are necessary for the organizations to survive. The first main point for the action program is acting responsively and responsibly. It is said that if something is done and cause a problem, then something must be done to solve the problem, right? So corrective action is necessary to eliminate the original source of the problem. An example for acting responsively and responsibly is in the case of Bureau of Land Management's wild horse problem. So what happened was, the Bureau of Land Management is an agency within the United States Department of the Interior, which are responsible for administering federal lands. However, in 2014, BLM was assigned to handle the wild horse crisis on Western public lands. There are at least 88,000 wild horses are roaming in 10 western states. If left unchecked, their population could reach until 100,000 or more in the next year. The agency then offers these horses for adoption to anyone who wants to adopt the horses, but unfortunately they ignore adoption fees for ranchers. And then animal protection protesters charged the BLM for overlooking the slaughter of wild horses by giving them to ranchers. They stated that ranchers ship the animals directly to slaughterhouses, making a handsome profit in the process. BLM denied the issue of any role in the commercial slaughter of wild horses, but still the angry protests continued. Only when BLM officially recognized that their fee waiver program was a major contributing factor, the program was cancelled. Hence, the agency changed policy with respect to ownership. Ranchers who already buy the horses would not take title of adopted horses for 1 year. And for that year, even though the ranchers is responsible for care and feeding, the animals remain public property and cannot be sold. Again, action speaks louder than words, right? The second point for the action program is the coordinating action and communication. In this case, communication strategy supports the action program, where the objectives are basically to inform internal and external target publics of the action, to persuade those publics to support and accept the action, and to instruct publics in skills needed to translate intention into action. Another classic example for the coordinating action and communication is the Johnson & Johnson Tylenol crisis. For this case, a company under Johnson & Johnson, which is called McNeil Consumer Products Company, encountered an unexpected incident where 7 persons on Chicago's west side died mysteriously after taking the Tylenol capsules. There are a few rumors said that they died from cyanide poison, which is in the Tylenol capsules, and news spread rapidly over television and the news wires. This situation called for an immediate action supported by communication. So, what they do to overcome this problem is that first, they stop production of Tylenol capsules. Second, they establish license with the Chicago Police and FBI so that they can investigate the case on why the persons died mysteriously. Third, they recall all Tylenol capsules that already been distributed before the incident happened. The fourth one is they design and produce tamper-resistant packaging to ensure that the capsules is more secure and not exposed to any harmful substances. The last one is step up marketing efforts so that people will not get scared to buy the Tylenol capsules again after they already improved the new ones. From the two cases that we have learned just now, it is clear that even though communication is important, it is not enough. So, in this case, the organization's communication efforts must be supported by action. According to Donella Meadows, purposes are deduced from behavior, not from rhetoric or stated goals. And it is true. We measured something by our actions, not just by words. And that concludes my part for our presentation today. So we're gonna move on to the next presenter.
In this chapter, we are talking about step 3 of the management process, which is taking action and communication. Action strategy is actually the main thrust of a PR program, but some of the process may be unknown to the public. Therefore, communication acts as the main catalyst to support this action strategy. I will be explaining about the communication program. Here, the focus is messaging. There are two essential elements in messaging, which are message content strategy and message delivery strategy. Message content strategy deals with how the message are developed, created, and expressed, while message delivery strategy deals with the message dissemination channels, how the message are going to be spread. To execute these strategies effectively, it requires a very strategic and careful planning.
Hi, I'm Azzahrah Hanani, binti Asmadi, and I'll be continuing the presentation with message content. Communication message is actually more difficult than it may first appear. So that is why the message content should be carefully crafted and strategically framed. First step in constructing the communication message is crafting the message. So there are many techniques for crafting communication message. For compliance gaining strategies, communication messages are often persuasive in nature as it is designed to get receivers to behave in way desired by the sender. There are 4 common ways in compliance gaining strategies. The first one is section. For example, number 2, it is altruism. For example, the third one is argument. For example, the last one is the circumvention. For example, the second techniques in crafting the messages is power and fear appeals. So, if the sender has little power or control to exercise over the receiver, the persuasion then becomes the primary strategy and instruction or direction becomes the relevant strategy. Other than that, research on impact of message characteristic found that message impact is usually mediated or conditioned by the receivers. What does it mean by that? So I'll give you an example. The receivers evaluate fear-producing messages based on the 3 characteristics before making their decisions. And this method is called as protection motivation. Last technique used in crafting the messages is one-sided and two-sided arguments. So in PR, many organizations must deal with public opinion, obviously. So in these cases, the message content need to be addressed by both sides of the argument. So I'll pass the next topic to Izzah. Izzah, it's your time to shine.
Thank you, Azza. So, my name is Sayyidatul Eizzah binti Ad Zamakhshari with metric number 050496. So, the first thing we need to know is what is framing the message. Framing the message is putting the message into a context that facilitates compliance, agreement, and also understanding. It is usually used by PR practitioners in having a message to be perceived in a certain way. Also, we need to know the 3330 formula that is devised by the late author scholar Clay
Schamfeld.
The first number means that the audience, they will not give you more than 30 seconds to get their attention, so that you need to give your key point strongly, dominantly, and positively. The second number indicates that some will give you up to 3 minutes to carry your message. The last number indicates the time that the audience members will spend their time to get your message content. Next, we have co-orientation and framing. So what's that? The first principle in framing the message content is to know your client or your employee's problem situation. The second principle is that you need to know the needs, the interests, or the concerns of your target public. There is one tool called co-orientation model. This tool, it helps PR practitioners to determine the organization's position, the public's position, their mutual orientation, and also the orientation towards the problem or issue. Next, we have framing for news media. So beside framing message for the public, for the target public, PR practitioners also need to frame the message for the media. There are 6 criteria in framing the message. Impact. We talk about the number of people affected. We talk about the seriousness of the consequences. We talk about the directness of the cause and effect. And this does not apply only into news but also to other information. Next, we have proximity. Proximity is the distance between the audience and the problem or issue of the concerns. So means that the nearer the issue, the news for you, the more value the news become. Timeliness refers to the time expectation for accessibility or availability for the information. Prominence is for well-known or recognizable person or organization. Journalists and also the public, they are interested in the private lives of the public organization or also the public figures itself. Novelty is something that is unique or unexpected. So the journalists, they want the message or the news to be unexpected, to be unique, because they know people will be attracted to it. Conflicts or drama, they are the major ingredients in news. Not that they appeal to the journalists, but they also caters the public's interest. Next, we have priming for effective framing. So it focuses on how people receive the new message and how they interpret the new information. So we have encoding and decoding the message. Encoding is the process of putting the meaning into the message. Meanwhile, decoding is getting the meaning. There are 3 elements in encoding and decoding the message. Semantics. Semantics is the science of what the word means. We have denotative and connotative in semantics. Denotative is the common dictionary meaning. It is accepted by most people with the same language and also the same culture. Connotative refers to the meaning of the words that is based on our own experience or our background. Symbols. Symbols, it refers to the dramatic or direct means of persuasive communication with a large number of people and also the distance. It also plays such an important role, such a significant role in public relation and also fundraising program of health and also welfare agencies. That is all from me. Thank you for listening. But wait, I think there is one more point, right? So why don't we ask Azza? Because I need to go.
Hi, it's me again. Now I'm going to continue what Izzah has presented regarding the encode and decoding the messages. But I'm going to talk about stereotypes. I think we all are familiar with stereotypes, right? So stereotype basically is an impressions that we have about something, right? So in communication, nothing raises more problems than the reality that most mass media audiences have limited access to the fact. And thanks to the limited access and information, people become confused, and that's why they tend to rely on the stereotypes regarding anything. So Lippmann has talked about stereotype. He said that it's like a pictures in our head that mainly derive from what we see and hear from the mass media. So thanks to incomplete and distorted stereotypes, it poses problems to PR. For example, so from the example, it can be seen that stereotypes sometimes can lead problems to PR. Yeah. Oh, other than that, stereotypes can serve as a defense mechanism against having to exert the effort required to learn about and understand the uniqueness and detail of each group, person, and situation. I think that's all regarding the message content. So moving on to the next presenter. Bye!
Hi! So my name is Faten Arissa binti Hisham with metric number 051498, and I'll be explaining my part, which is message delivery. Before that, what is message delivery? So the communication strategy and any public relation must include message delivery, because there's no point of creating, framing and presenting an effective message if there's no way of getting the message to the intended public, right? So we start with the first part, which is disseminating messages. Basically, there are two theories which I would like to highlight. The first one is Roper's concentric circles theory, and the second one is Rogers' diffusions of innovations theory. Now we start with the first theory, Roper's concentric circles theory. This theory argues that information spread through public in a ripple of water. So the message is new ideas originates from great thinkers, which later they will share it to their great disciples. So those ideas are spread throughout the population in circles. You can refer to the concentric or nesting circles. So there are 6 levels of diffusion, which are, the first one is great thinkers, which is the originators of ideas, for example Adam Smith. Second, great disciples, so for example Abraham Lincoln. The third one is great disseminators, for example Oprah Winfrey. Fourth, lesser disseminators, which are people who wield more localized influence, for example community leaders, news editors and teachers. And fifth, participating citizens, for example volunteer organizations. And sixth, politically inerts, people who seldom voice opinions but may vote by and make decisions, for example just like us. Moving on to the next theory, diffusions of innovations theory by Everett Rogers. So this theory explains how, why and at what rates technology and ideas spread. So it goes through 5 stages. The first one is knowledge, which when people learn about an innovation and gain understanding about what it is. Second, persuasion, potential adopters develop interest in innovation. And third, decision, so potential adopters decide to adopt or reject the innovation. Fourth, implementation, so those willing to try the innovation will apply them in a small scale first. And the last one is confirmation, so adoption is either reinforced or the decision to adopt is reversed based on evaluation. So let me give you an example. So during the years of 90s, mobile phones were introduced to common people, even though the cost was much higher at that time, right? So Rogers' theory can be apprehended by understanding how people accepted and get used for mobile phones, even though when it was introduced it wasn't something which comes with like 500 killers application, just like what we have nowadays. So it was merely a portable landline. So moving on to the next part, which is selecting delivery channels. So in the perspective of public relations strategic planning process, it suggests that if the campaign objective is to change knowledge, mass media will be an effective message delivery. But if the objective is to change behavior, then interpersonal method is the better channels for message delivery. So as for the source of influence, there are 5 stages, which are awareness, interest, evaluation, trial, and adoption. So I will give you an example, a more simple one. So let's say you want to buy a new model of iPhone, which is iPhone 12. So you will start with gain the awareness, knowledge from media, especially social media, right? So next, interest. So you will feel interested to buy the new model, then which brings you to the next stage, which is evaluation. So you will evaluate and do some research about the product. And next, trial. So you will want to give it a try, and then you will bring people who close to you, for example your best friend or your family members. So they will give opinion about why or how or anything related, so that you can make decision to buy the product. And the last one is adoption, which is finally after the evaluation and trial, you finally decided to purchase the product. So as you can see, like you have go through like these 5 stages, and when it comes to purchasing decisions, friends and family are the best sources of influence, right? So I guess that's all from me. Got to go now. Bye.
Hello everyone, I am Ili Najwa binti Mohd Ikhwan 051611, and I will continue with the second point, which is opinion leaders. So an early research on the impact of mass media found a 2-step flow model of media effects, whereby media messages first reach a selected group of individuals, which is known as opinion leaders, before being passed on by those individuals to others in their social system. So what is opinion leaders? So if you refer to the book, opinion leaders are people that can influence the knowledge, the attitudes, and also the behaviors of others. Opinion leaders tend to be social and positively received by others, or in other words, they tend to be popular. So the key is that opinion leaders are defined and identified by the people on whom they have influence. This is because opinion leaders can urge the audiences and followers to consider an idea, product, or business. So in every industry or community, there are people with stature and credibility. So determining which opinion leaders to collaborate with depends on the targeted audiences that are being reached. So to give you an example, let's say a company is selling cookware and they targeted women, or specifically housewives. You may see a celebrity chef helps in promoting and selling the products, as they have extensive knowledge in using the products in their daily life. So like we can see in the Go Shop or Wow Shop, right, where Chef One or other celebrity chef helps in promoting the cookware. So these celebrity chef can be considered as opinion leaders, as they have influence to attract audience to purchase the products. So once a company have the idea of who they want to reach, they can look for opinion leaders, for the suitable opinion leaders that are best able to reach their targeted audiences. Next, social media. Social media has expanded the definition of what an opinion leader is by facilitating the rise of internet influencers. So these influencers help in developing a brand that takes advantage of social networks and also the social media trends. Like we can see nowadays, there are social media influencers in Instagram or even Twitter, where they help in promoting or reviewing many products, as people nowadays spend most of their time on social media, right? So this can help to influence them to purchase the product. So next,
if you can see in the slide, there are a table about the distinction between the classic opinion leaders and also the modern influential. So, for the socio-economic status of classic opinion leaders, it is evenly distributed across social state, while for modern influential, it is concentrated in higher socio-economic groups. As for the topics of influence, the classic opinion leaders are specific with little overlap. Meanwhile, the modern influential is several with considerable overlap. Next is the mass media exposure. For the classic opinion leaders, the mass media exposure is on higher exposure levels, while for the modern influential is the consumptions of particular media types. Like nowadays, besides mass media, there are also social media, right? So people may depend on the social media rather than the mass media. Next is the nature of influence. As for the classic opinion leaders, it is on the leader or the follower, while for the modern influential, it is the gradations of influenceability. So moving on to the next point is using special events. So special events are designed to get a message placed in media. It is used to attract the public's attention directly and also through the media coverage. So next, special events offer the opportunity to bring together a larger audiences and also the presentation of substantial volumes of information. Special events is usually produced with the public interest in mind. So there are many examples of social events like the fundraising events or grand opening events and so on. So to give you an example, if you know Airbnb, I think most of you are familiar with Airbnb, right? So Airbnb once succeed in promoting an attention draw events where they built and set up a floating house in Thames, which is the largest water home in United Kingdom. So for the event to gain publicity, they invited journalists and also social media influencers and even created a contest for the public. So this event was a huge success as they gained even more mentions, like a total of 340 press pieces in the UK alone, 73,500 page hits, 10,000 new users, and also 200 millions of social impressions. So I think that is all from me. Thank you.
Hello, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good day everyone. So I am Nur Najihah Ahmad Nasrulldin. I'm going to talk about the barriers to implementation. There are three types of barrier in communication process. There are audience obstacle, speaker obstacle, and subject and purpose obstacle. Audience obstacles is everyone lives in the protective cocoon of his or her own spinning. This cocoon will insulate the individual from the communication bubble. Some sort of barrier in audience obstacles are like social barriers, age barriers, language or vocabulary barrier. Receivers or audiences are bombarded with so many messages, so they are selective on which messages they have to pay attention to, and they also may perceive and interpret the message differently. How to solve this is for the PR practitioners, they have to focus on the needs of organizational stakeholders. The second type of barriers is speaker barriers. So it is about the speaker or the message sender who is not only the practitioner or other organizational persons, and it may be the organization itself. The problem here is like when it arises, the fundamental rhetorical problem that arises from the speaker, like problem of source of credibility, like maybe the director of the organization become the speaker and all the audience know that this director has low credibility. How to deal communication obstacles arising from an organizational reputation? So the first one is the PR practitioners have to craft messages that explain or reinforce organizational credibility. The second one is that they can establish identification by emphasizing the common that they have with the public. The third obstacles, which is subject and purpose obstacles. So subject obstacles is the barriers to the implementation of PR program comes from the subject or purpose of the campaign itself. The complexity of the subject as an obstacles to communication is related to this problem is the cultural history that associated with some topics. For example, like launching a national campaign to educate people about the prevention of child sexual abuse. But then, the target public of the campaign is the Catholic. This become very difficult because this is kind of sensitive topic to the Catholic. How about the purpose obstacles? So purpose obstacles is related to the purpose of a PR campaign, includes the cause and control. People are resistant to engage in behaviors that are too expensive. Expensive means like they might cost in time, in their effort or money. They are also resist when the request when they do not see how can they control the outcome. For example, there is a campaign to encourage us to stop using the straw because we want to save the turtle. And they don't want to believe that not using straw even one day could save the turtle. PR practitioner has to craft messages that use argument strategies. Okay, so we're going to the last obstacles, which is diffusion obstacles. Yeah, because we have one more obstacles, but this is from the mass communication perspective. So diffusion obstacles is about regulators of absorption rate. It is all about the rate of flow in the transmission, and acceptance of ideas is governed by manufacturers. Hillman and Shadsley codified major reasons of why many information campaigns fail. Is because there exists a hardcore of chronic know-nothings. So those people who are in this cocoon of know-nothing, so how to persuade them when they do not have any knowledge about it? The second one is the interested people acquire the most information. So if someone doesn't have interest in that information, their motivation to listen to the information become less. I think that's all from my part. Thank you so much for listening.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nurul. I'm Fatihah binti Abdul Manan and metric number 050331. With this, I am going to continue my friend's part with crisis communication. First thing first, we need to clarify that even with full planning and implementation, PR program can also become victim to crisis. With this, crisis communication are one of the steps that need to be executed during the crisis management. However, we need to understand that during crisis management, both communication and action elements should be implemented. Because if PR practitioner were not to implement both of those two elements, there are some mistakes that are bound to be happened. So right now I'm going to explain to you what are those common mistakes that are bound to be happen if PR practitioner were not to apply these two elements. So the first common mistake that PR would do is hesitation. So when there is element of hesitation, it would lead to public reception of confusion, and sometimes they would also make the public think that there was lack of preparation from the PR practitioner's behalf. So the second mistake is obfuscation. So obfuscation can be defined as an action that making something unclear. So when PR make these mistakes, it would lead to public to think that the PR is being dishonest, or there is also an element of insensitivity coming from the PR side. I'm sorry. The third mistake is retaliation. So retaliation is an action of doing something that is harmful to others because of what they have done to us. Or in easy word, you can define it as revenge. So when PR were to do this kind of mistake, it would increase tension and intensifies emotion of the public rather than reducing them. Okay, so for the fourth point is prevarication or equivocation. So mainly these two words discuss regarding the use of ambiguous language to conceal the truth. So when PR were to do this kind of mistake, it would lead to bigger problems because the public expect the PR to explain things. They wanted the truth from PR. So when they misguided things, tell lies, public will be dissatisfied. So number 5 is pontification. So pontification can be defined as an action to express your opinion in a dogmatic way, in which these mistakes will create vulnerability by taking a high-handed approach without really dealing with the issue at hand. So number 6 is confrontation. When PR practitioners make this kind of mistake, it will provide other party visibility by keeping the issue alive and unconsciously giving them a platform and also giving them more chances to respond to the issue at hand. So the last mistake is called litigation. Litigation can be defined as a management of communication process that happen during the course of any legal dispute so as to affect the outcome. This advantage here is that it will guarantee even more visibility and may eliminate more reasonable solutions. That is all from me. Thank you for listening, and I'm sorry for any misunderstanding.
We have come to implementation summary. The purpose of this chapter is to introduce some major considerations and principles in implementing PR programs. It is important to remember that effective communication requires efficiency on all 3 elements, which are sender, receiver, and the message. It comes down to the venerable 7 C's of PR communication. The first C is credibility. The sender must put on a great performance, which eventually drives the organizational reputation. The audience or receivers must also have confidence in the sender and high regard on the source's competence on the subject matter. The second C is context. A communication program must keep up with the realities of the environment. It is important to confirm, not contradict the message. And effective communication comes from a supportive social community, which is actually largely set by news media. The third C is content. The message must be meaningful to the receivers. It also must be relevant to the receiver situation. We all know that people usually select items, information, or offers that promise the greatest rewards for them. The content determines the audience. The fourth C is clarity. The message must be clear and simple. Receivers must understand the message, exactly what you are saying to them. Complex messages must be compressed into slogans, themes, or stereotypes. The farther the message needs to travel, the simpler it must be. The fifth C is continuity and consistency. This is because communication is an unending process. Also, repetition is great for persuading and educating. The story or message must also be consistent. The sixth C is channels. It is recommended to use established channels that the receivers use and respect. This is because creating new channels might be difficult. Use different channels as they serve different purposes and effects. The seventh C is capability of the audience. It must require the least effort on the receiver, which means your message must be easy to understand. You must get to know your audience, or maybe focus on your target audience. In conclusion, communication and actions are not the ends. However, communication is one of the essential and visible part in executing the successful PR program.